Welcome back to the program. I'm Ezra Levant. Well, I'm delighted to have our next guest with us, Patrick Brown, the leader of the Conservative Party, the Progressive Conservative Party of Ontario. Great to see you.
Well, it's great to be on your show.
Well, thanks for coming here in our little studio. I've been watching the Ontario race, but I think like a lot of Conservatives, it's been on our back burner politically as the federal election happened. Now that that's sort of tamped down, tell me, what have you been doing since you became leader of the Ontario PCs? First of all, when did that happen for our viewers outside of Ontario?
Well, the election was May 9th. I came from the federal level, and so I resigned my federal seat. We had a by-election where I entered the provincial legislature. The Liberal government put everything except for the kitchen sink into the by-election. They failed miserably. We won by a resounding amount. And frankly, we're excited provincially. Our membership's gone from 10,000 to 80,000. We are young, we are diverse, and we want to get Ontario back on track in 2 years and 8 months.
Well, I'm hopeful because I live in Ontario now. I like to call myself an Albertan in exile, but I am a Torontonian now. I pay the taxes. I suffer the regulations. I see my power bill going up every month. Every year. It's crazy. Can you tell me, do we have hope here in Ontario? It's almost like it's tough to remember a time when Dalton McGuinty or Kathleen Wynne weren't in power. Tell me reasons for optimism.
Well, I really think that there's lots of reasons for optimism. Right now, the government's at its 71% disapproval rating. It's one of the lowest points that you see in the government in their entire time in office. All public opinion suggests that people are thirsty for change. And why are they thirsty for change? We have among the highest energy rates in North America. We have 354,000 regulations. We're a haven for red tape. Recent report says we're the most indebted subnational government in the world. And I think people in Ontario are saying, Kathleen Wynne, we hope that she might have been different, but it's more of the same broken policies that we saw under Dalton McGuinty. And we as progressive Conservatives are now getting ready to present a positive alternative, how we can make Ontario prosperous again.
Now, I acknowledge that Stephen Harper was 9 years in office. He had campaigned 3 or 4, I think 5 times actually by the end. There was fatigue setting in, and that was a factor. But I also observed 2 things that I'm worried will come after you. Number one, an enormous number of third-party, or NGOs as you might call them, campaigning against Harper. There was almost 100 sort of third-party registered campaign groups, including many public sector unions. And second of all, I found that the media's own bias, they weren't even pretending anymore. Are you worried about both of these 2 things being thrown at you, third-party labor union groups and the media?
Well, I would say, first of all, it's very unusual for a prime minister to win a 4th term, and certainly there was an appetite for change. We're finding a similar appetite for change on the provincial level. The government at Queen's Park has become entitled, complacent, lacking new ideas, and in terms of third-party groups, historically that's been their crux of what they've went back to. But I think even that is being exposed. Recently we had a scandal that emerged at Queen's Park where the government was caught red-handed, giving payments to teacher unions, taking money out of the classroom with no expectation of expenses. One teachers union actually said they never asked for payments, never expected payments. There was
no receipts even. It was almost like a brown paper bag full of bills.
Well, the first is almost comical, except for the fact it's taxpayer dollars, money that's supposed to be in the classroom. And the first response the government said was, this isn't money going from the classroom into political advertising because they ballpark expenses. It's for pizza and hotel rooms. I don't know. First of all, no one bought that in Ontario. Well, I don't know if the pepperoni is gold-plated and if they're staying at the King Eddie, but no one bought that. Then it came out, our great finance critic, Vic Fideli, exposed that the government already spent over $1 million on hotels and food. So it's not for hotels or food. And the government all of a sudden said, well, this is business as usual. We don't ask for receipts. What small business in Ontario doesn't keep receipts?
Yeah, that's especially for $1 million. But let me ask you this. I've been in Ontario long enough. This isn't my first rodeo, scandal-wise. I've seen, everything from e-health to the natural gas power plants that were moved and shut down. Scandal after scandal, many of them in the billion-dollar range. And I'm worried that Ontarians are becoming numb to it. And they either say, I don't care, because the numbers no longer shock, or they say, Well, that's life in Ontario now. Is the outrage trickling down to severely normal people, or is it just the political class?
I really believe it is. And what's interesting is normally when there was outrage, it was more conservatives being upset. Now we're seeing actually, even the Toronto Star wrote an editorial saying this was unjustifiable and the government has no grounds to stand on.
They'll come back around when the Liberals once election.
But you know what, though? Everywhere I go in Ontario, people are telling me they've had enough of it. No wonder we're seeing polls that have the Liberals so low right now, is because people are thirsty for change. And frankly, it's disrespectful to taxpayers. I think that's finally hitting in. When you take money out of a classroom and get caught red-handed to use it for your own political purposes, no one in Ontario supports that.
Now,
well, maybe the Liberal Party headquarters does.
Yeah, well, for sure. You're fairly new in the provincial legislature, the provincial parliament. Obviously, you were a federal MP. Your first private member's bill. Tell me what it is and why you chose that to be your first debut legislatively.
Well, one of my real senses in Ontario is that we're overtaxed, that the government shakes you down in every aspect. You know, when you buy a cup of coffee, you get taxed. When you have a home, you pay property taxes, you pay income taxes. Every aspect of life, you get taxed in this province. And then I realized that not only do we have this massive burden of taxation, but Ontario has the highest death taxes in Canada. You know, an estate in Ottawa, a $500,000 estate would pay $7,000 in death taxes. In Hull, it would be $65. So I said to the legislature, you know, shake people down, but don't shake down people in their coffins.
Yeah.
And I just want
taxes. This is combining the two. Now, you got a website?
StopDeathTax.ca.
StopDeathTax.ca. What can people do with that website?
Well, we're trying to build support. We want the government to hear that there's an overwhelming amount of people in Ontario that say, we don't want this. Enough is enough. And already thousands have signed the petition, and I will be presenting it at Queen's Park.
Do you have any chance of stopping this private member's bill? I mean, they got an outright majority. Any chance, or is this just flying the flag and saying this is where we stand? If
the Liberals would adopt this idea, you know, I would be proud to compliment them and say, you know what, there's no monopoly on a good idea. Am I optimistic they'll do the right thing in the next budget, incorporate this? No, I'm not optimistic because they haven't shown a willingness to work with other parties. But you never know, and you got to keep trying because that's what families in Ontario expect of us.
Listen, I appreciate you coming by today. You're a busy guy. It's nice to meet you. I met you before in different situations. You were an MP federally. You're doing other things. You have a very important job right now. Not just Ontarians depend on your success, but the whole country. I remember growing up in the West. Ontario was the engine of the country. And if Ontario is a have-not province, that is a burden for people outside. It's important for Ontarians you win. It's important for Canadians that you win. I wish you good luck, and I hope you make us part of your circuit in the media. Come by occasionally from time to time when you've got news, and we wish you well.
And we'd love to.
Right on.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. Folks, stick around. More after these words.